Hi, I'm Greg of the Real Depop's Workshop. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made my ultimate workbench. It was made from some leftover furniture that was on its way out. Little creativity, not a true plan, but a concept and an idea. So I want to show you how you can make something happen, and then you can kind of wing it and still come out with a great product. So without any further ado, let's take a look. When the time came to change out the furniture in one of our guest bedrooms, little did the twin beds that resided in that room know that they would soon get a second life as my workbench, my ultimate one-off workbench. Now mind you, when this opportunity presented itself, I didn't have a plan. I just had inspiration. I looked at the wood and thought, I could use that for something. So I quickly introduced them to my table saw. I knew what I wanted to do or what I thought I could do, but the beds were similar but not identical. One had 3 large openings, the other had several drawers and a large opening. So first off, they needed to be cut to matching sizes so they could match the idea I had in my head. I thought if they were the same dimensions, one could be the front, one could be the back, and then I could introduce some sides with the rest of the material. So after pulling out my track saw and getting the pieces cut down to the right dimensions, that dictated the size of my workbench. Again, I had no diagram, I had no plan, just a picture in my head of what it could be and what I think I wanted it to be. So once I got the pieces cut to the same size, it was all hands on deck, all tools on deck. Now, because you watched my first video, you realize this is the part where I made a workbench so that I could make a workbench. Yes, this is how it began. This is where I milled up some lumber to make a workbench so that I could build my ultimate workbench. So with the workbench being built in the background, I focused on the project at hand. I began by creating some half laps for the legs. Again, I had an idea of how I wanted it to work, but my constraints were that I was working with predetermined lumber. So I milled up the legs. I didn't have a dado at the time. I have one now. So I was able to clean the legs up and create a half lap that I would use to sit on a 4x4 that would contain the portions of the bed that I had evened up earlier. So with that concept in hand, I moved on to what would soon be the top half of my workbench. I knew I needed large openings because I wanted to be able to clear the tools off of my workspace and get them out of the way while I was working. And I wanted to use the large openings I see in a lot of other workbenches. So I took pieces of the furniture that I had cut the holes in and did a lot of sanding. You will see a lot of sanding. And this is a prototype. So the large pieces are going to be in the bottom, and there's going to be a space in between with the tool area above that. There are a few scuffs and things that needed to be cleaned up. So for some areas I used sawdust and glue, filled in the patches that needed to be patched, and then later sanded and cleaned up the areas so they would be ready for staining. Because this bench would be made from some existing parts and some parts from a big box store, I figured the best way to tie it all together would be using stain. And for joinery, we use a lot of pocket holes. I pulled out the masca, figured out what I needed to do. Again, there were no plans, just the idea in my head. and this is how it began. I figured I would use pocket holes to join the sides to the 4x4, and then at that point, join them to the upper rising legs. And because we had to take those hard edges off, I used the 1/4" round over bit and softened all of these sharp corners. And you can see the concept is starting to come together. The frame that was once the side of a twin bed is now the side of the lower portion of the workbench. And this is what it looks like. Again, all tools on deck. These would soon become the ends of the workbench. And this is the carcass. See, one side has 3 large openings, the other has 4 drawers, and one other large opening. The ends were put in, and I had not quite decided how I was going to utilize the sections, but I did divide it into 3 sections, and I would later determine the use of each. So again, this is the carcass. I've decided that I wanted to use some existing drawer supports that I had from another project. And once I made that determination, it was time to put some leveling feet on the bottom. It was starting to take shape. The idea I had was coming together. Things were starting to flow. And you can see by the patch there that I changed where I wanted to put the adjusting feet. So just to keep it real, this was a very fluid project. I thought I wanted them in one spot, and when it became time to make it functional, I changed the plans, and it was the best thing ever. Another thing I did is once I turned it over, one way to keep out the creepy crawlers is to seal up the bottom. So I created a bit of a time capsule on the back, put some caulk and some sealant around it, and I'm gonna button up the bottom and make it smooth. I figure if it's good enough for Ferrari, it's good enough for me, because this workbench is gonna be the Ferrari of all workbenches. And this is what it looked like when I was done. The bottom is smooth. Again, that's just a preference of mine. Then it was time to put the casters on. I wanted the quick release casters so that once the workbench was in my garage, I didn't have the wheels protruding and didn't have a trip hazard. And because I wanted them inset, I had to create a cavity for the wheels to spin. Otherwise, they would be sticking out into the aisle that would be walking down in my garage. So I created a cavity, but under load, the wheel shifted just a bit. So I had to create a secondary cavity, and you'll take a look at that in just a moment. And I call it the VW look, because if you've been around a while, it looks like an old VW. But that allowed the wheels to flex under load, and that's what I needed it to do. At this point, I was dry fitting the drawers that I created. The workbench was wide, so I had some specially made custom drawers made for it. And because this was going to be storage on top of the lower half, I put some support pieces around the edges, and I pulled out the track saw so that I could create the top of the lower portion of the workbench. And for joinery, again, we're going to use half laps to hold the upper portion. This is a tiered creation. And because my shop is small, I needed all the storage I could get. So you see where I'm going with the concept. We're going to have a large opening with a door on the left, storage in the middle, and on this side, we're going to have 4 drawers and more storage. The center is going to be filing cabinets for paperwork related to the shop. The other side is going to be all drawers. So this is the support strip you saw earlier. I'm putting a round over on it. Again, you want to get rid of as many of those sharp corners and sharp edges as you can in any shop, just in case you're reaching for something. So that's what's going on here. And eventually we will tie all this together. You can see that there's a lot of staining that needed to be done to the drawers after we fit them, made sure that they worked properly. And that's going to tie it all together again because the pieces were from different places. So everything's been sanded, and at this point I started to apply the stain, which would tie it all together visually, and it went on really well. And the workbench that I made to make this workbench was definitely serving its purpose. So again, a lot of sanding and a lot of staining in this project, but at the end of the day, it came out quite well. That's one of the finished drawers with stain, and these are a couple of the remaining drawers that needed to be done, and that was quite the treat. This is what the end looked like before we put stain on it, and just like that, tied it all together. Again, there's a lot of staining because this was a piece with a lot of raw wood, and it needed to be protected and sealed in some form or fashion. It is going to be a workshop, so it didn't need to be perfect, but it needed to be nice and it needed to look good, because that's how I like it. So with that said, we finished staining the top of the lower portion, and we're going to put another portion on top of this. This is going to house the area where it's going to have the tool storage. This is another portion of the furniture that I had to cut into a couple of pieces, and this would be the end of the top. And that's what it looks like on the left after it's been cut and installed. This is just a dry fit at this point. The top is going to be off-center to one side because I'm going to have a vise on one side. So it's going to be closer on that side, which creates a bit of a ledge so I can set tools down in storage, and it worked out perfectly. And once that was all determined, it was pocket hole time. The entire top portion can be taken off if I need to break down the workbench at some point. I can just unscrew it, take it off, and at least make it a little lighter, because let me tell you, at this point, this bench weighs probably a literal ton. There's a lot of staining involved because you can actually see the inside of the top portion, so I had to stain both sides, inside and out, to tie it all together. And this too was quite the production. Good thing I built that first workbench. And luckily, it was a nice sunny day when I decided to do this, so we got it all stained up. Everything matched perfectly, and it looked really nice. At this point, we had to stain what was now going to be the bottom of the top portion. As you can see below it, there's a little gap of about 6 inches. That will house the original workbench. So now that we had already dry fit everything, it was time to utilize the pocket holes and secure it to the top portion. And at that time, we needed to cut the actual top. Now the top is made from 1/2 inch plywood with 3/4 inch MDF on top of that. So we took quite a bit of glue and we glued the MDF to the plywood. It is really a strong and solid top, and it came out very nice. You can see the offset at this point. You can see to the left how it's closer to the edge. That's the side that was going to house the vise, and the other side you can see a bit more of a hangover, unintended. Like, comment, subscribe. Now, I'm not a T-track guy, nothing against it. I'm just a dog hole guy. So at this point, I'm drawing out the grid the way I want them to be on my workbench. Again, I think if you watch the first video, you realize that you can put dog holes wherever you want, the way you work. This is how I work, and this is how I wanted them. And again, this was quite the production. It was fun to do. Everything came out crisp and straight. And these are the tools that got her done. So again, 59 dog holes drilled. Quite the production, but didn't take as long as you might think. But it looks like it did. And that is quite a bit of sawdust. But this part is so satisfying. So as you can see, the dog holes came out very nicely. After this, we're gonna just clean them up with a bit of a round over. Let's do that 59 times, and we'll get that done. Luckily for you, I'm not going to show you all 59, but this was part of the process. Later, yeah, I hooked up hose to that and cut down on some of that dust. So then it came time for edge banding. I put red oak around the edge of the top because that's what I had available to me, and since the existing portions had oak, it kind of tied it all together. And yes, that miter came out very nice. So this is what it looked like after the top was complete, lacking any stain or any sealer. But you can see from the ground up, we had the first layer, had the gap, had the tool storage, and now we're going to mask off so that we can stain the oak, and later we will seal the MDF top. And this is what it looks like afterwards. Again, it does help tie everything together. The pieces from the big box store with the existing pieces gives it a nice bit of cohesion. Again, there was no plan when I started this, just an idea that I could use these pieces to make a workbench. And this is the second time that I've used shellac. The first time on my original workbench, I brushed it on. A roller is definitely the way to go. So as a raw product, MDF sucks up anything you put on it very quickly and very thoroughly. So it's going to take a couple of coats to get this done. But as you can see, it's being sucked up, but it looks really nice once it settles in and dries. And then that gives us an opportunity to hit it with a sander and even things out so that we can put on the next coat just to give it a little more protection. And it's going to absorb a little bit of that, but at some point it seals up very nicely. And yes, this part is overkill, but those that know me, know me. Once I got it cleaned up and wiped off, I just had the buffer in the garage, so I just plugged it in because it was there. You do not have to do this if you choose to steal some of these ideas. And what would a workbench be without electricity? I saw that opportunity to put a plug in, so I had some spare parts, reached for the jigsaw and the oscillating saw because it was kind of tight in there with the jigsaw. But I know enough to get a plug in there. Again, do you? If it's not something you're comfortable with, you don't have to do that part. I also am a pencil guy. So I put some grooves in to house my pencils. I like to mark up and like reach for something without having to look for it. So I took my router out, took out a cove bit, and made a couple of slots on either side and on the ends. And it's real simple to do, but again, this was just something that popped into my head. I hadn't really seen it before. I'm sure somebody's done it. But I just thought, wow, it'd be nice to just have a groove where I could slide a pencil into, reach for it, without having to search all over the shop. And it actually turned out very nicely. Once that was all done, we put a little stain in there and it looked very nice. On one end, we had some bench cookies, some paper for glue up some staining to keep my screws, and a few first aid incidentals on one end as well. Yeah, as you can see, I have my container. I have some Tapcons on the left and some regular screws on the right. And on the other end, I have more bench cookies because that MDF top is very smooth. Now let's just enjoy some glamour shots. Well, folks, we are definitely rounding the corner on this build. On this side of the workbench, I want to show you where I have open storage. Right now, I keep electrical cables in there. I have another small cubby hole next to it for little miscellaneous items. And then I have an area for a filing cabinet where I keep items related to the shop so that I can keep them out of my personal home office. And next to that, I have more open storage. Right now, I've got some work boots in there, some shop towels. And then the next level up, of course, this is where the original workbench is housed. And then we get to tool storage, our MDF top. And then we have our vise with dog holes number 60 and 61. Thinking about doing a separate video on the vise build. Didn't want to spend too much time on it on this particular video, but that is the introduction to this side of the workbench. Okay, we are definitely rounding the corner. On this side of the bench, I'm going to talk about the 4 drawers you see here and then the larger cabinet you see on the end. However, that larger cabinet is actually 2 more drawers. So in this particular drawer, I have some PPE, some safety equipment, mask, things like Band-Aids, tape, things that can come in handy if you have a small nick or something in the workshop. Below that, I have some sanding instruments, have some tools. I actually laid these drawers out in the cutout foam, Kaizen foam, however you want to call it. And we'll get into detail about that later. So again, we have some gloves that come in handy, some tools, measuring instruments, some chisels that I use. And on the level with the original workbench, we have a tent that I can use for a spray booth and some tools that came in cases that actually happen to fit perfectly on this particular shelf. Then we have our tool storage for when we're working up top. And now we're going to cut away and take a look at. So now I want to go into detail about how I maximize my space on these drawers. So I use this cutout foam, Kaizen foam, however you want to call it or use it. So I was able to triple my space in this particular drawer. So I have 1 layer, 2 layers, and a 3rd layer. This is where I have my tools if I need to square up a box or something. And then I have some measuring instruments. And on this particular level, I've got, as you can see, T-squares, a couple pencils, and just miscellaneous items. Hand sanders, playing cards. But what this did for me was allow me to maximize my space. I had never done this prior to building this bench, but again, because we have a small shop, I figured it would be the best use of my space. Now let's get into the other drawer. Now the lower center drawer is another triple decker. Again, I use the cutout foam. I store additional tools for storing up boxes. On the second level, I have miscellaneous tools that I just didn't want to just throw somewhere. They just actually happen to fit in this drawer. And then more things, levels, rulers, tape measures, things for measuring and laying out, chisels. I don't have the best chisels in the world, so I can just throw them in this particular drawer. But again, this allowed me to gain space and works out perfectly for me. So above that, we have storage for gloves. This particular layer, we have some levels and more measuring instruments. And this is only a 2-layer because these are kind of thick. I have drill bits. Actually, this is perfect storage for that. Again, keeps things organized. After a while, you memorize what's in what drawer. You're able to get to it. When something's missing, you look for it, you put it back, you're back in business. Okay, we have made it to the grand finale. So you saw what I did with the other drawers. Now, this drawer was kind of a surprise. I decided I didn't want to have another opening or a cabinet like I had on the other side, so I decided to add another drawer. So I added that drawer, but then I figured what's better than one drawer? 2 drawers. So I added the drawer below it. Now this is where I store the wheels to the workbench, a bunch of miscellaneous clamps that I have yet to put on a clamp rack, and then some other miscellaneous items, coveralls, miscellaneous tools that this is their new home. So this was my attempt to just be creative, because when you have a small shop, you have to create storage or space wherever you can, and this was my attempt to have a little fun and also create some functional space, and it has worked out, actually worked out very nice for me so far. So with that, this just happens to be a perfect location to store storage, things that come in cases, heavy items. Just pull them out, use them, put them back, everything's good to go, and you're on to the next. Again, storage is key when you're talking about a small shop. As we were finishing up, the sun was beginning to set, and it created a perfect scene to close out this video. Hi, glad to see that you're still here. So just so you know, this video was 6 to 7 months in the making. The first cut to now has been quite the journey. Hopefully you found it interesting, educational, inspiring, whatever else it needed to be for you to watch. If you did like it, please like, subscribe, and come back for the next video. Next video is going to be about my mobile saw table, which is right here. Trust me. So looking forward to sharing that with you. Thanks for watching.